continuing our presentation on It's a Great Idea, the Individuals with Disability Education Act. Today we'll be discussing the 10 basic steps in the special education process. So real quick, again, we are your North Florida PTI, which stands for Parent Training and Information. Basically, we provide information and resources to families for special education. We don't represent families and we don't give legal advice. We're not attorneys. We do provide support, information, and we help identify options. F&D has been the statewide parent-to-parent since 1985, and the value of families getting support by networking with other families is built into everything we do. We often get calls from parents or other family members who just need to talk, and we're here to listen. Altogether, F&D logs over 15,000 calls a year, most of them from parents and family members, but also from educators and professionals who are looking for information. We have a large database of resources in Florida and a library filled with disability-related resources. So regardless of the question, our staff will go the extra mile to find the answer. In helping to identify options, our philosophy at F&D is that it's not our role to tell families what to do. It is our role, however, to inform families on what their options are and encourage them to make their own decisions about what is right for their family. What makes F&D unique is that the majority of our board of directors, management staff, and all of our program staff are parents or family members of persons with disabilities. Before I lay out the special education process, I want to share some information on what is called RTI, or Response to Intervention, also known as MTSS, the Multi-Tiered System of Support. Response to intervention in the multi-tiered system of support is a process used by educators to help students who are struggling with a skill or a lesson. Every teacher will use interventions, which are a set of teacher procedures, with any student to help them succeed in the classroom. And it's not just for children with special needs or learning disabilities. If a student is struggling, his or her teacher will use things like test scores and other measures of progress to choose a research and proven intervention suited to help the child learn. And if a child doesn't respond to the initial interventions, more focused interventions are used to help the child master the skill. RTI strategies address both learning and behavior, and they're in a tiered approach, with the tier 1 being minimal strategies, and then tier 2 and 3 including more rigorous type strategies. So step 1 to the special education process starts with the child being identified. Children are usually referred to professionals for review and diagnosis after being referred by a parent or a teacher. Another method used, and we've talked about this in prior modules, is the Child Find Progress program, and this program is used by educators in every state. And to review, Child Find is a law passed by the federal government in 2004, known as the Individuals with Disability Education Act, IDEA, where IDEA mandates that all state public schools evaluate students demonstrating signs of potential disabilities. If a child is diagnosed with a disability, school districts must provide adequate special education assistance. Many educators rely on Child Find program to locate at-risk children, and that's when they have the Child Find activities many times in districts. Teachers often refer children to school counselors or psychologists to be evaluated for possible disabilities. When this happens, parents must be notified to give their consent. Concerned parents can also refer their children directly to professionals. After parents grant their consent to an initial evaluation of their child, Florida law requires evaluation to be concluded within 60 calendar days after parents agree to the decision. Please note that while you may request for an evaluation through an email, unless it's understood between you and the district that that is your formal consent, that you will most likely be signing a formal consent form that the school district provides you in a meeting. So just make sure that you understand when that consent actually starts so that you can count your 60 days. Step 2, the child is evaluated. And the evaluation stage is very important and is intended to determine whether children, one, have a disability that would necessitate assistance through special education program. And this means the 14 different categories for disability, and we've listed them in prior modules, but you can also find them online. You can go to websites such as Parent Center Hub and just type in categories and you'll see them listed. Also, does the child have any needs requiring special education instruction? And last, any that require any type of special education assistance. Many facets of the child's life will be evaluated. If it's determined that the child needs assistance, then recommendations for special education programs will be provided by the team. Now, parents uncomfortable or in disagreement with their children's diagnosis can request an independent education evaluation, also known as an IEE, and school districts often cover the cost of these evaluations. Step 3 is where eligibility is decided. After a child is evaluated, parents and other professionals review results to decide whether the child requires special education assistance. Parents can always seek a reevaluation, like I shared, if the results are not conclusive. Step 4 is where the child is found eligible for services. When children are diagnosed with disabilities, they can enroll in a special education program. Within 30 calendar days of a diagnosis, educators must prepare an individualized education program, or an IEP, to aid children diagnosed with disabilities. Step 5 is where the IEP meeting is scheduled. Schools are responsible for setting up and administering IEPs, and it's also their responsibility to contact parents and notify them in advance of an IEP planning session so they can be present. It's also their responsibility to schedule an IEP planning session at a time and location convenient to parents, and to notify parents of any educators and other professionals who will be present at the meeting, including professionals specializing in the type of disability afflicting the child. Step 6 is where the IEP meeting is held and the IEP is actually written. IEP meetings are held to discuss a child's educational needs and outline an IEP. Usually there is a draft IEP that can be sent home ahead of the meeting so that you can make notes prior to the meeting, or if you have any questions, you can make those notes as well. In most meetings, parents attend without their child, but it doesn't mean that you cannot include your child if appropriate, and they're most definitely encouraged to attend right about age 14 for a transition IEP. After IEPs are developed, parents must agree to any of the special education services their children receive. Children receive assistance immediately after IEPs are finalized and parents agree to them. So placement and related services are two things that you would need to provide consent for. Parents disagreeing with IEPs can always discuss the issues they have with educators. Open parent and teacher collaboration is very important throughout the child's IEP. When compromises cannot be reached, parents can always request either another IEP review, or you can ask for further data, or if needed, ultimately you can ask for mediation. In Florida, at least two school district personnel per district are trained in what is called a facilitated IEP, and that's an emerging approach in Florida. Facilitated IEP team meeting is one that includes an impartial facilitator. The facilitator is not a member of the IEP team, but rather is there to keep the IEP team focused on developing the child's program while addressing conflict as they arise. Step 7, after the IEP is written, services are provided. Once IEPs are finalized and parents have signed the consent for services to begin, schools follow the plan as outlined in an IEP. Teachers and special education specialists can then refer to the IEP whenever they have questions about a child's needs. They'll be able to find the accommodations agreed upon, strategies, supports, and we will go much more in depth into the actual IEP in the next module and all the components that make up that IEP, I promise. So the next step is progress is measured and also reported to parents. So educators and special education specialists closely monitor students and document any progress made by students as they relate to the goals on the IEP. Parents receive constant updates about the progress made by their children, and these progress reports are usually given to parents on the same intervals as grade reports for other children enrolled in school. Step 9, the IEP is reviewed. IEPs are reviewed by educators annually or whenever parents request a review. When it's required, educators and parents can make alterations to the IEP. It might be that the child actually is progressing and more goals need to be added. So it's not necessarily a negative. Or it might be that maybe the child is not able to accomplish a goal and maybe it needs to be broken down, or maybe the language needs to be tweaked. So there's many different reasons for maybe wanting to review the IEP sooner than once a year. Parents are permitted to make recommendations for IEP modifications and appeal any disagreements they may have with the plan, and do revisions and discuss possible compromises with educators. Parents can also request more testing if needed, if you feel like maybe it might uncover some new information that could help increase editing that IEP. The next and last step is the child is reevaluated. Special education students must be re-examined every 3 years in what is known as a triennial. Reevaluations are conducted to determine whether the student still requires special education services, but in many cases children are re-examined if their problem worsens or they require additional assistance. So that is the end of this short presentation. I hope you learned a little something. Again, my name is Kathy Powell. I'm the Program Director of POPIN, Parents of the Panhandle Information Network, a program of Family Network on Disabilities. And if you would like to reach me directly, just call us at 1-800-825-5736 and they will put you in contact with me. Thanks again and have a great day.